episode of the Black Man's Roundtable. And I am Rodney Butler, your co-host today. And today we have a candidate on that is running for the Douglas County Superior Court judgeship. And he's en route. His name is Zaine Hedge. He is en route to another campaign event. We got to keep in mind these candidates are very, very, very busy. And I think this is the second or third interview that I've had to do with one of the candidates being in the car, either coming from or going to, an event. So hopefully all of his audio and video stuff stays up, because it's a little different when you're moving, especially in the car. So if we have any technical, we're not predicting any technical difficulties, but if we have any technical difficulties, just understand, that is the reason why. But Zaine, we glad you, still came on and doing what you have to do for the Black Man's Roundtable. And with that, sir, Zaine, would you let the audience know a little bit about yourself before we start our questioning today?
Yeah, sure, Rodney. I really appreciate the opportunity, and Kevin, great to see you and meet you. So my name is Zaine Hedge. I'm running to be your next Douglas County Superior Court judge. I've lived in Douglas County since I was 13, so Douglas County is my hometown. I graduated from Douglas County High School, went to college at Reinhardt University, and then I graduated from law school in 2013 from the Charleston School of Law. Been practicing 10 years with me and my dad. We have a law firm together. Right on Hospital Drive, right in the heart of Douglasville. It is a civil litigation, personal injury, and criminal defense firm. I usually do most of the criminal work. My dad usually does most of the personal injury work. But we have a really great system where we're able to work together and cross-work on those cases. So I definitely look forward to this opportunity to just talk to you guys and have a good time tonight.
Great. Appreciate it. Great introduction. I think one of us going to end up asking you, my first question is going to end up asking you a question that you're going to maybe have to go back into that a little bit in your introduction, what you just did. And the very first question, to jump right into it, is can you describe your background and experience in law, particularly any experiences that have prepared you for Douglas County Superior Court judge?
Yeah, sure. So one of the great things about working in a law firm with your dad, especially my dad in particular, is that as soon as I passed the bar, we opened the office, and my dad always treated me like an equal. And that's incredibly important because he didn't hold my hand. He didn't babysit me. He let me get out there and, have cases of my own. I'm going to be honest with y'all. He let me get out there and learn some tough lessons. He let me kind of fall a little bit and then have to pick myself up. And that's been one of the most instructive things for me. So our firm, again, is primarily a personal injury and criminal defense firm. But over the years, we've also handled those cases that a Superior Court judge would handle. So I've handled divorce cases. I've handled child custody cases. One of my most favorite cases was an adoption case where I was able to spearhead the adoption of my half-sister and my mother. And so that is incredibly special to me. But obviously on top of that, I have a wealth of criminal experience also, which is one of the two big types of cases that a Superior Court judge will hear. The bigs are felony cases and family law, and so I have a wealth of experience in both of those. The last thing I'll tell you, Rodney, is one of the things that has been incredibly instructive for me is the work that I've been able to do in the law firm, but in conjunction with the work that I do in the community. A Superior Court judge isn't just somebody who looks at law books all day. They're a pillar in the community, and so it's important that Douglas County has their next Superior Court judge be someone who's from the community, who understands the community, and who does work in the community. And I'm happy to go into detail if you want me to.
No, I think that's good because we got a bunch of questions for you tonight, and so and believe me and Kevin, we can go real deep, but we have quite a few questions for you. So, Kevin, go ahead on, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. What motivates you to seek the position of Douglas County Superior Court judge?
Yeah, sure. So that's a really easy question for me, actually. If I can just preface it a little bit, a lot of folks don't know that I had originally wanted to run for state court, and this was 3 years ago, because my hope was that I would see a lot more young people But what we know is that young people, especially nowadays, have getting into felony trouble a lot younger and a lot more often. And so that's kind of how God kind of shifted my approach into why I decided that I wanted to run for Superior Court 2 years ago. So the short answer to your question, Kevin, is it's young people. You know, my hope is that young folks will come into my courtroom. They'll see somebody who is a younger individual, but a leader nonetheless. And when I talk to them, you know, you guys know how it is with young folks. Once you get to a certain age, once you start trying to give them wisdom, you're just an old person trying to tell them how to live their life. And so my hope is that they'll see me as a younger person and they'll recognize, hey, you know, okay, this person's a little closer to age to me than maybe some other folks. Maybe I should really listen to what he has to say. And then by having that initial rapport, my hope is that they'll do something different.
So let me just piggyback off of that. I wholeheartedly agree. And one of the things I think, Zane, and you might be doing this already, are you visible at the football game, the basketball game, things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. Yeah, the short answer is yes. I've actually been really lucky because one of the relationships that I've established and that I've maintained over the years has been with my 11th grade chemistry teacher. So when I was at Douglas County High School, Coach AJ, she was the coach of the Lady Tigers basketball team as well as the track team. And we've stayed in touch all of these years. And one of the things that she always did is she always invited me to all the games. She would invite me to the meets. She would invite me to, one of the great things she did is she always invited me to come and talk to her class. And so, you know, I've been visible in the community. And of course, my intention as the next Superior Court judge is to remain visible.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, Rodney?
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you. Next question. How do you interpret and apply the law, particularly when faced with ambiguous or conflicting precedents?
Yeah, so my approach to that is essentially taking a look at what the legislative intent is. A lot of the times, and one of the reasons why so many people have a difficulty like reading the law is just because it's a lot of legalese, it's a lot of legal language. But one of the ways that you kind of get over that is you take a look at what the legislative notes say. You know, what was the legislature trying to accomplish with this particular law? Now, the great news about being a trial judge is even when the legislative intent is not terribly clear, there is a high likelihood that the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court has looked at that issue already, because of so many lawyers that we have in Georgia have probably had that same issue. And so what we do is we look at the legislative intent, see what the legislator intended, and then if that's not helpful or if that's not helpful enough, then we take a look at what an appellate court has said. And 99 times out of 100, the appellate court has an answer for us. And so as a trial judge, I don't have to make up law or make up interpretations.
Gotcha.
Basically, when you say that that case law or law that has already been interpreted is the law of the land, like, as you know, we might have had some conflicts with that with our Supreme Court as of late. You know, a couple of the last one, they said one thing about what was, you know, case law, or what was interpreted, or how other justices interpreted that law. So what you're saying is that when you go back and look, like you said, it's probably already been looked at anyway in the state of Georgia. You're basically saying that is what you go with for the most part. Now, I know it's hypothetical, but you
well, yes, sir. I mean, and that's exactly it, because, you know, number one, we don't want trial judges out here just making up law. We don't want that, because that's not our job. Our job is to apply the law, and we definitely don't want to be in a position where folks think that judges are, what do they say, legislating from the bench. You know, that's not what we want. Our job is simply to apply the law as it is written. And the great thing is the legislature usually provides some legislative intent, some notes that we can consult. And then when they don't, the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court have usually addressed that issue. And that's really important for me in particular, because what that also does is that's a check. That's a check on trial judges deciding, hey, I don't like this law, so I'm going to apply it the way that I want to. Because even if you do that, if the Court of Appeals has already answered that question, then all either party has to do is appeal the case. You're going to end up getting reversed anyway.
Okay. All right. I got the next question. Excuse me. All right. Can you provide an example of a difficult legal decision you had to make in your career, and how did you arrive at that decision?
Yeah, sure. So one of the cases that a Superior Court judge will hear, and nowadays often it's far too often, are cases that involve crimes against children. And my second or third year, I know that Judge James was still on the bench. So it was my second or third year, but I had a case where an individual was charged with first-degree child cruelty. And, one of the conversations that I have with my clients a lot is, when what they're telling me doesn't make sense or doesn't match with what the evidence is telling me. And I'll tell you, the young people are what make my heart turn. And so having a case like that, I was already in conflict because of how I feel about young folks, how I feel about kids. But then on top of that, I was in conflict because I have an absolute duty to my client. And so the hard part of that case was resolving that conflict to such a degree whereby my client understood, of course, what the legal issues were and ultimately had to face the consequences of his decisions. And I'll tell you that to this day, I still don't believe that he was completely honest with me. And that's what made it so difficult, because as a defense attorney in particular, you're going to hear a lot of bad stuff. But when the client is honest with you, you can at least kind of work with it. So the difficult part, Kevin, was that I had this conflict with the client that I don't believe was still being completely truthful, and then you juxtapose that with the fact that it was a crime that involved a child. It was a very difficult situation. We ultimately got the case resolved. I want to say that, and I think it got resolved to, frankly, his betterment. He had to end up doing some prison time, but I really do believe that that case in particular was incredibly instrumental and instructive on how I approach those cases going forward.
Okay, cool. Rodney?
Okay. All right. How do you ensure impartiality and fairness in your decision-making process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that I do, and I think probably the primary thing that I do, is I try to be as fair and unbiased in everything that I do. My lady is actually sitting right next to me. She's the one who's driving the car. And a lot of the times we'll have discussions, and sometimes those discussions involve either us having to come to an agreement about something that both of us disagree on. But one of the big things is I always try to talk to her about what ends up being the most fair, the most objective, the most reasonable thing. And so the answer to your question, Rodney, is that I do it in my everyday life. One of the things that I do when I go to the gym, I think about, okay, what makes the most sense in terms of the workout that I'm trying to get? I might want to do something this way, but it might not make the most sense for the results that I'm trying to get. And so essentially, I try to do that in my everyday life. Now, I'll just use one more example from my legal life. I've had to have conversations with clients about, I understand this is what you want, but you have to understand that not only is this not reasonable, but it's also unlikely to be passed off by the judge. And so when you have those conversations with clients like that, you get real used real quick to giving bad news to folks, to having folks understand that it's not going to go your way. And one of the things that I love to tell my clients, a lot of times they don't appreciate it, but one of the things I love to tell my clients is I'm not in the dream chasing business. So I'm not going to tell you something that makes you feel good, and I'm definitely not going to tell you something just so you'll hire me. What I'm going to tell you is what is the likely outcome and the reasonable outcome based on what you're telling me, what the facts are, what kind of personality the prosecutor has, and of course the kind of judge that we're facing. And so that way you kind of get a multiple pronged approach to making sure that you're making the most fair and unbiased decision.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Alrighty. What steps would you take to ensure that all individuals appearing before you in court are treated with respect and dignity?
Well, I do that every day. One of the things that folks get wrong, I think, is when they get into positions of leadership, they forget where they come from. One of the things that my dad always tells me when I'm growing up is, son, no matter who you're dealing with, you could be talking to the president of the United States, you could be talking to the person who changes the bags in the trash cans. Every single person deserves dignity, respect, and courtesy. And I put that into practice. I know that you guys are, at your homes or in your office right now, but I would challenge you. Ask anybody in the courthouse how I treat everybody, whether it's other lawyers, whether it's court staff, of course, whether it's judges, whether it's the janitorial. So as a matter of fact, some of my favorite people in the courthouse are the ladies who do the cleaning because they're just so darn sweet. They're just nice people. And what I've found is that when you have the right personality, when you have the right approach, when you are kind to other people, kindness comes back to you. The last thing I'll say, Kevin, is one of the things that I really love about my job is that I get to see people and I get to see different kinds of people where they are. People think that the job just involves you and the client, but a lot of times I get a chance to have conversations with family members. Some family members are what you would call the upper echelon. Other family members are straight from the country, and that's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But I've had a lot of practice getting to know and talking to different kinds of people. And I mean, that's just kind of been my practice. That's the way my parents raised me. And as far as I'm concerned, if I decided to go up there, get on the bench, and then do something different, I have no doubt that my dad would be incredibly disappointed. And he would probably come up there to remind me where I came from.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Good stuff. And for Kevin, when I say this, man, I appreciate you talking about and holding them in the light that you're holding them in, because, you know, a lot of, I ain't gonna say a lot, but some people, you know, in your generation, they forget about, you know, those that came before them. So I think that's a good characteristic to have. Next question: how do you plan to handle cases where the law conflicts with your personal beliefs or values? Very good segue. And Kevin, this is a very good segue question. I'll repeat it.
Okay.
How do you plan to handle personal beliefs or values?
Well, Rodney, the great news about that question is that, frankly, I don't really have a choice. My job is to follow the law as it's written. I mean, there are things about the law right now that I disagree with. But I've had to have conversations with clients about what the law says and about the fact that I don't have the power. And sometimes I've had to say, and even the judge doesn't have the power to provide the result that you would like. So there's not really anything that I can do other than follow the law. Now, I will tell you, the best judges are those who don't always like the decisions they have to make. And I've had that practice already in my personal practice, because there have been times where I've had to have conversations with clients that I didn't want to have. There have been times, and I have no shame in saying this, I can't use names, obviously, for attorney-client privilege, but there have been times where I've had clients that I know have just gamed the system. And that conflicts with my view on morality and fairness. I think if you were to ask, I'm not going to say 100%, I'd say 90% of the prosecutors that I've worked with, I think that if you were to ask them, they would tell you that I try to do the right thing. Sometimes it doesn't make them happy. Sometimes it doesn't make me happy, but that I always try to do the right thing. And so whenever you are faced with a situation where maybe I don't like the way the law is written, maybe I don't like the fact that because the way the law is written, an individual might be getting a lighter sentence than I think is reasonable. There's not a whole lot that I can do about that other than legislating from the bench, and we've already had that talk. All it takes is for the DA's office or the individual's attorney to appeal the case, and I'm going to get reversed anyway. So it's a bunch of wasted judicial resources, all because I didn't like what was being said. So as far as I'm concerned, I can go home and pout about it afterwards, but I have a job to do.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. What strategies would you employ to manage a busy caseload and ensure timely resolutions
Yeah, sure. So,
of your cases?
yes, sir. So, Kevin, one of the things that I've said is that I have no problem with doing things that are unpopular if I know it's going to be helpful in the long run. One of the things that I've said is that we should have court more often, and it's only going to be for a little while. I've spoken to my colleagues about it. All of them rolled their eyes at me. They groaned at me and said, we don't need to go to court more. And I said, I understand that. But if we do that for 18 months, 2 years, whatever the time frame ends up being, then that's a small price to pay for more efficiency in moving cases. The second thing that I would tell you, Kevin, is that I also firmly believe in leaning on those experts in the field. And for me, those experts are the ones who are doing it every single day. The calendar clerks, the other folks that work in the clerk's office, the court staff, the staff attorneys, those folks are a wealth of knowledge. And one of the things that I found is when people get into the big chair, they decide, hey, well, I'm the one who gets to make the decision, so we're going to do it this way, and this way. And that's fine to have ideas. But if you know that people work in those offices every single day, they see what works, they see what doesn't work. I believe that you should consult those folks because I'm sure they're going to have ideas that they're ready to offer. It's just a matter of creating an environment whereby they feel heard, and that by being heard, that those ideas can come to fruition. So, once again, Kevin, just a short answer to your question: have court more often, and to lean on those folks who work in there every day, and allow those ideas to come to fruition.
Right. I totally agree with that. And that'd be a very unpopular decision for those people who are stuck. Because nobody wants to sit waiting on a case for years.
Well, and the other thing about that, Kevin, is we know that the wheels of justice turn really slowly, but they do turn. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to swallow that big pill. We have to bite the bullet and say, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable for a little while, but it's going to make things run smoother in the future. There are too many folks who want what they want right now and aren't willing to take the time and the discipline and the time investment to say, hey, let's do this for a little while so that we can have a better result in the long run. And I know y'all didn't say this, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up anyway. That's kind of one of the problems that we have with young folks. As young folks, they're a part of the microwave generation. They want something, they just look on their phone, they type it in, and it's at their house in 12 hours. That's not the way the world works. And one of the things that my dad has been very intentional about teaching me is that anything worth having is worth working for.
Gotcha.
Yep. Instant gratification does not work in the judicial system. All right. Next question. How do you approach the issue of sentencing, particularly in cases where there may be mitigating or aggravating factors to consider?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've told my colleagues that I would like to do is I want as much information as possible that you can offer, both from if you're talking about a criminal case, both from the DA's office and from the defense's attorney. And that part of that allows me to analyze whether what crime we're facing requires a particular sentence. Now, a lot of the times judges have minimums and maximums that the law sets out that you can't either go under or go over. But judges have an incredible power called discretion. And so in the use of judicial discretion, it's important to understand whether there are any mitigating factors. Now, one of the things that I'll say about that is sentencing is a very touchy topic for a lot of people because they think, well, on the one hand, this case wasn't that bad, or this crime wasn't that bad, or if it was overcharged or overblown. Well, I get to see that, and I get to see that with what both parties say. And so when I make my decision, my hope is that we will follow the two-pronged approach that people tend to forget. When people are talking about sentencing and when they're talking about punishment and consequence, we always understand the retribution side. We tend to forget about the rehabilitation side. It's a two-part process. And so as a part of any sentencing that I would do, I would always make sure that rehabilitation prong is satisfied. Whether that's having to get treatment from the Community Service Board, which is a fantastic organization and resource that we have here in Douglas County. Whether it's taking classes. I've had clients that I've told, listen, the prosecutor's not going to tell you to do this, but I'm going to tell you to do this because it's going to be good for you. You need to go in, whether it's take a defensive driving class, whether it's to go and take some psychotherapy class sessions, whatever. But you need to do that because otherwise, we're going to have another conversation in 18 months or 2 years because you're going to be back in my office. So I really do believe that as long as we keep in mind that it's a two-pronged approach, you deal with the retribution, but then you also deal with the rehabilitation piece. And you're going to get the sentencing right more often than you won't, Rodney.
Thank you. Kevin?
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. You kind of answered this from before, but I'll ask it again. Can you describe a situation where you had to make a difficult decision under pressure, and how did you handle it?
Sure. I'll actually give you a different one, Kevin. My third year in practice, a gentleman came into my office. We'll just call him Mr. Smith. He came into my office and he asked me about a particular situation he was having with his finances. He owed a lot of people a lot of money. And so he said to me, he's like, yeah, so, I just kind of need a lawyer to kind of help me navigate this thing. Okay, no problem. So I just asked him a few questions. I said, hey, so is there any reason to believe that you actually do owe this money? He said, well, yeah, I had a relationship with these folks. Okay. Do they know that you owe them this money? Yeah, because a couple of their guys are coming after me. Okay. Do you have the ability to pay back this money? Well, I mean, not really. I mean, if I sold some stuff, I could probably get close or whatever, but, it's not like I have, let's just say the amount was $22,000 in the bank right now. I said, okay, so what is it that you want me to do? He said, well, I kind of just want to see if you can make it go away. Now, Kevin, I'm gonna be honest with you. I had a conflict because on the one hand, I'm a young lawyer. I have no shame in telling y'all I was broke, and when I say broke, I mean broke, like real bad. So the conflict was, okay, this guy is willing to pay me at that particular time what seemed to be a handsome fee to try to work some legalese to make this work. And to be honest with you, the law at that time probably would have allowed me, it wouldn't have allowed me to get him off, if you will. But the amount of money that he would have had to pay would have been severely mitigated. But then the other conflict was what I know to be right. The other conflict was, well, what would my dad say after he realizes what I had done? And so it was difficult because I was at a crossroads whereby I could make a little money, and that would be very helpful for paying my student loans. I had a lot of credit card debt then, or I could do what I know to be right. I could do what I know would make my dad proud, and I could do what was in line with my values. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it was a hard sell. It was a hard sell because I was young. I'm glad to say that I ultimately did the right thing, and it's funny how God will reward obedience, because after that we got another case that ended up being pretty handsome for the office. So thank the Lord for that. But it was difficult because I was young, I was broke, and I was in a place where nobody would have known.
Right. Good deal. Okay, Rodney?
Yeah, good deal. How do you stay informed about changes in the law and legal precedents?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. The first way is a way that every lawyer has to, which is we have to do what are called CLEs, continuing legal education, and we have a set number of hours that we have to do every year. I've spoken about my dad a lot, so you're going to hear a lot more about it. One of the things that my dad does is, so he's Jamaican, he's very traditional, and so he believes in never doing anything in a mediocre fashion. And so the Georgia State Bar requires us to take 12 hours a year. My dad requires me to take at least 20. As long as he's paying for it, I'm totally okay with that. So, I do my CLEs, but then on top of that, I'm fortunate because I have a lot of colleagues who are older, who are more experienced, and who I've been able to build a rapport with over the years, who I can literally just pick up the phone. As a matter of fact, last year we had a property case, one of the cases that a Superior Court judge would hear. It was a case where our client believed that her ex-husband had forged her name on a mortgage modification so that he could get some equity out of the house. And so we had to go through that process. And the cool thing about it is, I'm going to be honest with you, last year I knew nothing about, it's called a Liz Pendus. I knew nothing about that. But I had, fortunately, I had a relationship with a well-known property lawyer here in Douglasville. I just picked up the phone and said, hey, I got this case. I have no idea what's going on with any of it. Can you give me some pointers? And because of the relationship that we have together, he sent me a long email with, hey, you want to look here, and these are the cases that are most likely to apply, and these are the kind of arguments that you're likely to face. And so, when you have the ability to, number one, know where you can get the information that you need, but then number two, have additional resources in the form of folks who have done before you, you're always going to be pretty close to what the law says. And then the last thing I'll say is, if for whatever reason the CLEs don't cover it, and I don't know anybody who knows anything about it, all the lawyers have access to case law called Fast Case. And while it's not nearly as good as Westlaw or LexisNexis, it's a great place to go to find more information about a particular case or a particular legal issue.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Kevin?
All right. Yes, sir. Okay. How would you handle cases involving represented litigants or individuals with limited English proficiency?
Okay, so I'll take that in reverse if that's okay. So for the limited English proficiency, one of the things that we'd have to do is we just have to get an interpreter. And thank goodness we have a lot of great interpreters that we have
Interpret.
access to in Douglas County. It's just a matter of getting them scheduled. So that's a no-brainer. But when you talk about folks who want to represent themselves, one of the things that I would impress upon them is how important it is to have legal representation. Everybody has a Sixth Amendment right to have an attorney, but everybody also has the ultimate absolute right to represent themselves if they want to. And after we go through the motions and we've had the talks and we said, hey, listen, this is what's going to be expected of you, and they're totally okay with that, well, then I'm just going to remind them, hey, before you go to trial, understand, you're going to be held to the same standard as the attorneys that are sitting right over there next to you. So you're going to have to know the rules of evidence. You're going to have to know what questions you can ask. You're going to have to know what questions you can't ask. They're going to object to you, I can guarantee you. And if you're violating the rules, I'm going to sustain the objection. And you might find yourself not able to provide the story that you think that you're going to be able to represent yourself. And ultimately, the consequence is probably going to be more dire. I've seen a number of individuals try to represent themselves, and something that some of my colleagues, some of the judges here in Douglas County that have done, which I really appreciate, I think is incredibly clever, is even when an individual wants to represent themselves and they are just adamant that this is what they're going to do, and it's clear that they don't have any legal training, or at least they don't have any legal training to be able to reasonably navigate the legal system, then what those judges have done is they just tell one of the public defenders, hey, you just need to be in the courtroom, and you need to be on standby in case this individual either ultimately wants a lawyer or has questions. And Kevin, what I can tell you, what happens more often than not, after those folks realize that they're in too deep, then it becomes a, hey, so how do I ask this next question, or what does this piece of evidence mean? And that's helpful. It's helpful. It's unfortunate that it has to go that way, but it's helpful. And one of the last things I'll tell you, Kevin, is one of the reasons it's so helpful is because an individual kind of gets a little taste of humble pie. You know, they see how difficult it is navigating the legal process. And I hope that after that experience, that they will do a better job at appreciating the nuances and the difficulty in handling the legal process. And God forbid that they end up having to go to prison or something like that after their case is over, learning that lesson for the next time.
Wow, I thought all he had to do was have a Netflix Law and Order subscription.
Look, Kevin, there are
That's what.
there are a lot of people. It's actually strange, to be honest with you. There are a lot of people that really believe the Law and Order, the Lincoln Lawyer, that it's all these theatrics, and sometimes you get theatrics, but it's extraordinarily rare, and they find out it's a lot more mundane than it appears.
Okay, Rodney.
That's pretty good, Kevin. Yeah. Just to pile on that a little bit, it's two professions that everybody, in America anyway, that they kind of want you to be, and that's doctors and lawyers.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, what I've always looked at with doctors and lawyers is, those are the two professions where everybody think they know your job better than you. So, yeah, it's crazy, and
Rodney,
also, but anyway,
just really,
yeah,
just
go
really
ahead,
quick.
Zane.
Let me say one of the things that has been most instructive for me is I've had conversations with potential clients, and they'll say, well, the case is about this. And I say, okay, well, let me get some more information about it, and we'll see what it's about. And they say, no. All you have to do is this. And I said, listen, you don't get to make the legal decisions about the case. I'm telling you, what I need to do is I need to see what you got. I'm not saying that I don't believe you, but I need to see what you got and see if we're, if we're on the up and up. And they'll say, no. All you have to do is this, and if you do this, then this will happen. And so I tell them, I said, okay, well, tell you what, let me know when you go to court. I'll be sure to be in there. I'll sit in the back. I'll have my notepad, and I'll pick something up. And so that way that I can use that for the next time around, because clearly you know more about this than I do.
Yeah, so it's just always been that. But all right, Zane, we got one last question for you. We usually spend a little bit more time on some, especially some of the questions that we have, but we understand that you're on the move, and I'm more concerned about you getting through the entire interview before something before technology happens. And you're doing an outstanding job of answering the questions thoroughly.
Excellent.
Anyway, there's not a whole lot to add. So So yeah, we'll get through this, and this is the last question. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to demonstrate integrity and ethical behavior in your legal career?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it happened recently. I'll give you it's May now. I thought it was still April. It's May now. 3 months ago, I had a DUI case in Fulton County, as a matter of fact. And the prosecutor on the case wasn't somebody I had a relationship with. It was the first time that I met them. And we spoke about trying to find a way to resolve the case. The gentleman is an older gentleman, first time he's ever had a DUI, in his 60s or 70s. And so we were really hoping to be able to, get some kind of reduction or so get the charge reduced. What we didn't know is that he had actually had a previous DUI in another jurisdiction that he didn't disclose. And so when we go to the prosecutor, we say, hey, this is the first lifetime DUI. We're hoping that you'll be willing to work with us and maybe reduce it so that he can at least avoid having a DUI on his record. It was a gentleman. He said, yeah, I'll look into it. Just make sure that you provide that he's got, active insurance, all this jazz, and we'll see what we can do. So when we went back to court, he wasn't there. And so I'm thinking, well, man, we got this really great conversation with this prosecutor, man. We had it kind of set. And now I have to deal with somebody else, and I don't know if they're going to be so amenable to the same deal. It was a older lady, and this was after we'd found out that he had a second DUI. And so she said, hey, I see in the notes here that we were looking to reduce the case because it's his first DUI. I'm still willing to do that. And I had to tell her, I said, well, listen, I feel like I have an ethical obligation to tell you that this is technically his second lifetime DUI. He had two back-to-back, actually. Here's that information for you. But I'm hoping that this won't deter you from the deal that we had previously. And she looked at me, and she paused for a minute, and then she said, most defense attorneys wouldn't have provided that information to me. I said, well, I assumed that you would have found it anyway. And if it mattered enough to you, you absolutely could have brought us back to court if you wanted to. And she said, no, just because you did something that I'm not used to seeing, unfortunately, which is people providing information that makes it worse for their client and not better, we're gonna stick with the deal. And as a matter of fact, I'll do you one better. We'll stick to the deal. And if your client just wants to pay a higher fine, I'll even dismiss these other two charges. So in that situation, not only did doing the right thing keep my integrity intact, but it also allowed me to increase the reputation of character and trust that I've been able to garner, and it created a better outcome for my client. And some lawyers will say, well, that wasn't in your client's best interest. You weren't doing your job the way that you were supposed to be doing. And I would say to that, well, being truthful is always in my client's best interest, because I don't know anybody who wants a lawyer that'll lie, because if a lawyer will lie to somebody else, then that lawyer will lie to you too. And so that's kind of how that worked out, and I was really pleased about it. And like I said earlier in the podcast, it really is true. A little obedience, God will reward that, and a lot of times He rewards it almost immediately.
Exactly.
Good stuff, God. Good stuff. So, Kevin, that was our last question. Before we have Mr. Zaine Hedge to close it out, Kevin, you have anything?
I believe I've run into some of your people today at the concert on the lawn this morning. They're handing out fans, so I got a fan.
Yes, sir. So I was at Leadership Douglas today. So I wasn't able to be there. I would have loved to have been there because I love talking to folks and I love meeting people. But it was our last class for Leadership Douglas, so I couldn't miss it. And yeah, I'm presuming that you ran into my lady. Do you want to say hi real quick or no?
Yeah.
There she is. You probably ran into Vanessa.
Yeah,
that's who it was. So yeah, no, it was a wonderful thing. I'm just so blessed to have a wonderful team, folks surrounding me, folks, trying to help me to accomplish this goal. And I'm glad that you were there. I'm glad that you got a fan, Kevin, because we got to give those bad boys out. We can't keep those. But yeah, no, it's just so many great things happening. So many great things happening. And one of those great things is y'all providing this invitation. So I just really appreciate the opportunity. And I got to tell you, I didn't know what to expect, but I had a lot of fun. And so it was really great talking to y'all.
Good, good.
Great, great. All right, Mr. Zaine Hedge, let the audience know, let the people know how they can reach you, support you, donate, all this stuff, man. Let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can get a lot of information about what we're doing with the campaign, what we have done, and the trajectory of this race by just going to my Facebook page, Zaine Hedge for Superior Court Judge. I always encourage folks to go to my website. You can read a little more about me in depth, and then that also gives you an opportunity to reach out to me directly. There's a contact me page, and it's not an automated service. It doesn't go to some member on my team. It comes directly to me. And so I tell folks, if you put something in there, give me at least 72 hours because I'm going to reply personally. And that website is www.hedgeforjudge.com. And you can also donate directly from the website as well. The last thing I just want to say, Rodney and Kevin, to your listeners, to your audience, we try to do things a little bit differently. One of the things that my dad always said is that we're going to be different kinds of lawyers. We're going to do things differently. We're going to do it the right way, but we're going to do it in a way that is different from what other lawyers do. And I've tried to take that philosophy into this campaign. One of the things that I've tried to do differently is I've tried to meet as many individual people as possible. I do believe in looking people in the eye. I do believe in shaking people's hands. I do believe in allowing those folks to see me and see what my body language is, see what energy I'm offering, so that they know that I'm sincere, that they know that I'm genuine and authentic about the things that I say and the things that I do. So anyone who's watching right now or anyone who watches this later, if I haven't met you yet and you want to meet me, I will make myself available. All you got to do is put something in the little contact me page on my website. I'll get back to you and then we'll have a conversation. Of course, we know that early voting is happening right now and it's going through May 17th. We do have Saturday voting the day after tomorrow, May 4th, as well as May 11th. And then Election Day is May 21st. My hope is that I've had an opportunity to meet you. My hope is that I've had an opportunity to earn your vote. And if I haven't done it yet and you haven't voted, let me take that opportunity. I will make the most of it. I really do believe that I'm the most qualified and I'm the most experienced and I'm the most ready for this particular seat to be the next Douglas County Superior Court Judge.
Amen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, that's going to wrap it up. And on behalf of my co-host, Mr. Kevin Evans, appreciate everything, sir. On behalf of Kevin Evans, we will see you next time out in those streets and those suites. Peace. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook.